The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through them for the last time. Her boots clicked against the polished metal floor as thousands of alien eyes watched her every step. The chamber buzzed with whispers in hundreds of different languages. Sarah had done this walk many times before, but today felt different. Today she carried humanity's final message to the galaxy. The council chamber was huge. It stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into darkness. Seats arranged in perfect circles held representatives from 10,000 different species. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Sarah still couldn't figure out how they thought or moved. At the center of it all sat the High Council, 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They had ruled for thousands of years. They made decisions that affected trillions of lives across millions of worlds. Sarah stopped at the speaking platform. The translator device around her neck hummed to life. Her words would be heard in every language known to the galaxy. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began. Her voice was steady and clear. "I stand before you today to deliver humanity's final statement." A ripple of movement went through the chamber. Some aliens leaned forward. Others sat back with what might have been smiles on their strange faces. Prime Minister Zarthek of the hegemony spoke first. His voice sounded like grinding metal. "Final statement? Are you humans threatening us again?" Sarah shook her head. "No threats, no demands, just a simple goodbye." The chamber fell silent. This was not what they expected. 3 years ago, Sarah continued, "Humanity came to this council with a proposal. We asked you to stop the slave trade in the Outer Rim. We showed you proof that millions of innocent beings were being bought and sold like animals. And we told you," interrupted Counselor Vexhai of the Trade Federation, "that such matters are not the Council's concern. Each species must solve its own problems." "Yes, you did," Sarah agreed. "Then we asked you to help the dying worlds of the Kepler sector. Their suns were going out. Billions would die without help." "Too expensive," said another counselor. "Not our responsibility." Sarah nodded slowly. "Then we asked you to stop the genocide on Theta Cygni. An entire species was being wiped out for their planet's rare metals." "Internal affairs," came the quick reply. "We do not interfere." The human ambassador looked around the chamber. She saw faces that showed no emotion, eyes that held no compassion. Beings who had lived for centuries but had never learned to care about anyone except themselves. "For 50 years, Sarah said, humanity has been part of this council. We came to the stars hoping to find friends. We found rulers instead. We came seeking partners. We found masters who see other beings as tools to be used." Prime Minister Zarthek laughed. It was an ugly sound. "You humans are so emotional, so weak. You worry about every small species, every tiny world. The galaxy is vast, human. Not everything can be saved." "You're right," Sarah said. "Not everything can be saved. But we believed that everything should be given a chance. We were wrong to think you agreed." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. When she pressed it, a hologram appeared above the platform. It showed the human fleet gathered at the edge of the system. Hundreds of ships floated in perfect formation. "Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately," Sarah announced. "We renounce all treaties, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. We are leaving." The chamber erupted. Aliens jumped to their feet. Voices rose in anger and confusion. Some demanded explanations. Others shouted insults. Sarah waited for the noise to die down. When it did, she spoke again. "We came to the stars seeking friends, not subjects. We offered partnership, not dominance. Since you prefer the old ways of exploitation and might makes right, we're done. Don't follow us." "Where will you go?" asked Ambassador Kethra of the Veltar Consortium. She was one of the few who had ever shown kindness to humans. "There is nowhere beyond council space." Sarah smiled sadly. "There's always somewhere beyond, Ambassador. The galaxy is big, but the universe is bigger." "This is ridiculous," snarled Prime Minister Zarthek. You humans make up less than 1% of the galaxy's population. You have barely 800 colonies. What difference will your leaving make? I guess we'll find out, Sarah replied. She turned to leave, then stopped. One last thing. We came not as conquerors, but as gardeners. Now you must tend your own garden. We pray it will be enough for what's coming. What's coming? Several voices asked at once. But Sarah was already walking away. Her boots clicked on the metal floor as she headed for the door. Behind her, the council chamber filled with noise and confusion. 2 hours later, the human fleet began to move. Ship after ship activated drives that the other species had never fully understood. The humans called it fold space technology. It let them travel faster and farther than anyone else. One by one, the human vessels disappeared into the black of space. They didn't head toward the outer rim or the wild zones. They flew straight out of the galaxy itself, toward the empty void between the stars. Within days, the effects began to show. The first sign was small. A trade route through the Orion sector suddenly became dangerous. Pirates attacked 3 merchant ships in 1 week. When the Merchant Guild sent security forces to investigate, they found something strange. The pirates were using routes that had been safe for decades. The humans must have been patrolling here, said Captain Morden of the Guild Guard. We never knew. More problems followed quickly. A weather control satellite over New Korath stopped working. The planet's government tried to fix it, but the technology was too advanced. Without the satellite, massive storms began to rage across the world's surface. On Veltar Prime, Ambassador Kethra watched news reports with growing worry. Slave ships from the Keth-Moran Empire had been spotted near the border. For 50 years, those ships had stayed away. Everyone knew the humans would not allow slavery near Veltar space, but the humans were gone now. In the deepest parts of space, automated systems began shutting down. No one knew who had built them. Most people assumed they were ancient technology, left by some long-dead race. The systems had worked perfectly for centuries, maintaining hyperspace beacons and communication networks. Now they were going dark. One by one, Dr. Yvonne of the Science Consortium was the first to notice the pattern. She was studying the shutdown sequences when something caught her eye. Hidden in the system codes were symbols she had never seen before. Computer translate. These symbols, she said. Unknown language, the computer replied. Dr. Yvonne frowned. The computer knew every language in the galaxy. She copied the symbols and sent them to experts across known space. No one could identify them. It would be weeks before someone realized the symbols were human writing, and months before they understood what the symbols meant. By then, it would be too late to call the humans back. The galaxy had ruled itself for thousands of years before humans arrived. The council members were sure they could rule it for thousands more after the humans left. They were wrong. 6 months had passed since the human ships disappeared beyond the galaxy's edge. Ambassador Kethra stood at her office window on Nexus Prime, watching the news feeds from across known space. What she saw made her stomach turn. The Keth-Moran slave empire had launched their biggest attack in 50 years. 12 independent worlds were under assault at the same time. Their massive black warships moved through space like hungry beasts, swallowing everything in their path. Kethra remembered. The last time the Keth-Morans had tried something like this, it was 47 years ago. She had been young then, barely out of school. The slave ships had come for her homeworld of Veltar Minor. They had taken everything. Millions of her people were loaded into cargo holds like animals. Kethra, herself, had been scheduled for processing when the human fleet arrived. She still remembered Commander Jackson's face when he saw the slave pens. His eyes had gone completely cold. Within 6 hours, every Keth-Moran ship was either destroyed or running for their lives. The humans had freed every slave and sent them home. Never again, Commander Jackson had told her. Not while humans fly the stars. But now the humans were gone, and the Keth-Morans were back. The news feeds showed familiar horrors. Families torn apart. Children crying for parents who would never come home. Entire cities emptied of their people. Kethra's assistant, a young Veltar named Morika, entered the office. Ambassador, the Council is meeting an emergency session. They want to discuss the Kethmaran situation. What's to discuss? Kethra asked bitterly. We'll do what we always do. We'll call it an internal matter and look the other way. Morika shifted nervously. There's something else, Ambassador. The Nexus grid is malfunctioning. Kethra turned from the window. The Nexus grid was the galaxy's main computer network. It connected every major world and handled trillions of transactions every day. It never malfunctioned. What kind of malfunction? Error messages. But they're in a language no one can read. An hour later, Kethra stood in the grid control center with Dr. Yvonne, the consortium's best language expert. The main display screen was covered with symbols that seemed to shift and dance in the light. I've run these symbols through every database we have, Dr. Yvonne said. They don't match any known language, but there's something familiar about them. Familiar how? The structure, the way they're arranged. It reminds me of something, but I can't place it. A technician called out from across the room. Dr. Yvonne, we're getting similar symbols from the weather control systems and the hyperspace beacons. It's spreading throughout the network. Dr. Yvonne's face went pale. It's not a malfunction, it's a shutdown sequence. Someone is turning off our technology piece by piece. Who would do that? Kethra demanded. And how? I don't know. But whoever built these systems, they're shutting them down remotely. Later that day, Kethra found herself in the deepest levels of the Nexus archives. These storage chambers held copies of every document, every treaty, every piece of data collected by the Council over thousands of years. She was looking for anything about the mysterious symbols when she stumbled across something else entirely. The file was labeled Historical Survey Galactic Infrastructure Development. It looked boring enough that most people would ignore it. But Kethra opened it anyway. What she found inside changed everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. The report was written by a team of archaeologists and engineers. They had been studying the ancient technology that kept galactic civilization running. The hyperspace beacons that made faster-than-light travel possible. The universal translators that let different species communicate. The weather control systems that made hostile worlds livable. Everyone assumed this technology was left behind by the precursors, an ancient race that had vanished long ago. But the report told a different story. Analysis of quantum signatures indicates this technology is not ancient, the report stated. Carbon dating and metal composition suggest an age of approximately 300 years. Furthermore, all examined systems show evidence of ongoing maintenance and upgrade cycles. 300 years. That was exactly when humans had first developed faster-than-light travel, when they had begun exploring beyond their solar system. Kethra read further. The report contained detailed scans of the technology. Hidden beneath layers of alien metals and crystalline matrices were components that looked almost familiar. Circuit patterns that seemed too organized to be ancient. Power systems that were too efficient to be accidental. At the bottom of the report was a single line that made Kethra's blood run cold. Recommendation: all infrastructure systems show signs of deliberate design by an unknown intelligence. Suggest: immediate investigation to identify builders and their current location. The report was dated 53 years ago. It had been buried in the archives and forgotten. Or perhaps someone had wanted it forgotten. Kethra copied the file and began searching for more. She found hundreds of similar reports. Studies that had been ignored or suppressed. Evidence that had been dismissed. The picture they painted was incredible. For 3 centuries, someone had been secretly maintaining galactic civilization. Every time a critical system failed, it was mysteriously repaired. Every time a species faced extinction from natural disasters, help arrived from unknown sources. The help always came with no explanation. No one took credit. No one asked for payment. In one file, Kethra found a report from her own homeworld. During the Great Plague of 2387, millions of Veltar had been dying from a disease that had no cure. Then boxes of medicine had appeared at hospitals across the planet. The medicine worked perfectly, but no one knew where it came from. The chemical analysis showed it was made with techniques unknown to Veltar science. When they tried to contact the suppliers, they found only empty shipping companies that had no real addresses. Similar stories appeared in file after file. The Rigel food crisis of 2394. The solar flares that should have sterilized the Antares colonies in 2401. The asteroid that should have destroyed the Centauri shipyards in 2415. In every case, disaster was prevented by mysterious help that came from nowhere. Kethra sat back in her chair as the truth hit her. The humans hadn't just been part of galactic civilization. They had been secretly protecting it for centuries. Every time the Council had refused to help someone, the humans had helped anyway. Every time the galaxy had turned its back on a crisis, humanity had quietly stepped in. They had been the galaxy's guardians, and no one had known. Now they were gone, and the systems they had built and maintained were shutting down. Kethra thought about the Kethmaran attacks, the failing weather satellites, the pirates in the shipping lanes, all the little disasters that were suddenly happening everywhere. For the first time in 3 centuries, the galaxy had no secret guardians, no hidden protectors watching from the shadows. The humans had tried to tell them. Sarah Chen's final words echoed in Kethra's mind. "We came not as conquerors, but as gardeners. Now you must tend your own garden." But they didn't know how to tend the garden. They had never learned because someone else had always done it for them. Kethra activated her communicator and called for an emergency council session. She had evidence to present, truth to reveal. She just hoped it wasn't too late to matter. Outside her window, another star went dark as its stabilization system failed. In the distance, more Kethmaran ships jumped into normal space, ready to harvest the chaos that was spreading across the galaxy. The cracks in civilization's foundation were growing wider every day. The exploration ship Truthseeker dropped out of hyperspace near the abandoned human colony of New Geneva. Captain Veltar looked at the dead world through the viewscreen and felt a chill run through his scaled hide. New Geneva had been home to 12 million humans just 8 months ago. Now it was empty. Dark. Silent as a tomb. "Any life signs?" he asked his sensor officer. "None, sir. But I'm reading massive power signatures from the northern continent. Whatever's down there is still running." Captain Veltar was part of the emergency investigation fleet. After Ambassador Kethra had revealed the truth about human involvement in galactic infrastructure, the Council had finally authorized expeditions to former human worlds. They needed to understand what the humans had really been doing out here. The landing party consisted of scientists from 12 different species. Dr. Yvonne led the team. Her expertise in ancient languages now focused on deciphering human technology. Their shuttle touched down near a complex of buildings that stretched for kilometers in every direction. The structures were clean and simple, built from materials that seemed to absorb and reflect light in strange ways. "The power readings are off the charts," reported Dr. Coleman, a Rigelian physicist. "Whatever's running in there could power a small planet." They found the entrance easily enough. The doors opened at their approach, recognizing them as sapient beings. Inside, the facility hummed with quiet activity. The first chamber took their breath away. Rows upon rows of crystalline storage units filled a space larger than most cities. Each unit glowed with soft blue light. Data streams flowed between them in patterns too complex for the eye to follow. "By the void," whispered Dr. Yvonne. "What is all this?" A holographic interface appeared as they approached. To their surprise, it spoke in perfect galactic standard. "Welcome to the Genetic Archive," it said in a calm, friendly voice. "How may I assist you?" "What is this place?" Dr. Yvonne asked. "This facility contains complete genetic templates for 2,947,639 species throughout the galaxy. Emphasis is placed on endangered and extinct species, with full reproductive viability maintained for future restoration." The scientists looked at each other in shock. Nearly 3 million species? Most of them didn't even know that many species existed. "Show us the Veltar entry," Dr. Yvonne requested. A new display appeared. It showed the complete genetic code for her people, but also much more. Medical histories, breeding patterns, dietary needs, everything needed to rebuild her entire species from scratch if necessary. When was this information collected, she asked. Veltar genetic samples were first archived 847 years ago. Last update was performed 23 days before facility shutdown. Dr. Yvonne's mind reeled. The humans had been collecting genetic information for nearly 1,000 years. They had been preparing to save every species in the galaxy. The team spent days exploring the facility. They found medical research that was centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed. Cures for diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Treatments for genetic disorders that each species thought were incurable. All of it had been developed in secret. All of it had been given away anonymously through shell companies and fake research foundations. But New Geneva was just the beginning. On Terra Secundus, they found manufacturing facilities that had been producing critical supplies for impoverished worlds, food synthesizers, water purifiers, medical equipment, all distributed through networks of dummy corporations. The production logs showed the scale of human charity. Billions of tons of food sent to worlds facing famine. Medical supplies worth trillions of credits given away freely. All of it disguised, to look like it came from regular commercial sources. The human colony on Kepler 442b revealed an even bigger secret. The planet was covered with installations that looked like simple research stations. But when the investigation team accessed the computers, they discovered the truth. Each installation controlled a network of weather satellites, not just over human worlds, but throughout 3 entire spiral arms of the galaxy. The satellites prevented natural disasters, diverted dangerous storms, and kept hostile environments stable enough for life. Look at this, Dr. Coleman said, pointing at a holographic display. They were controlling weather patterns on over 50,000 worlds. The satellite network was incredibly sophisticated. It could predict natural disasters years in advance and prevent them with tiny adjustments to atmospheric conditions. Solar flares were deflected by magnetic field generators. Dangerous asteroid impacts were prevented by gravity manipulation devices. For centuries, the galaxy's inhabitants had thought they lived in an unusually peaceful corner of the universe. They had assumed they were lucky to have so few natural disasters. They had been wrong. The disasters had been happening all along. The humans had just been stopping them. But the most disturbing discovery came at a research station in the Magellanic Void. This facility was different from the others. Older, more heavily defended. The station was built into a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out and reinforced. Its sensors were more powerful than anything the Council had ever built. They pointed not inward toward the galaxy, but outward into the dark space between galaxies. Dr. Yvonne accessed the central computer. With growing dread, what she found there made her wish she had never come. Convergence Monitoring Station 7, the computer announced. Tracking 247 potential contact vectors from extragalactic space. What's the convergence? She asked. Files opened across the display. Images that hurt to look at. Ships that seemed to be made of crystallized space itself. Worlds that had been converted into something that wasn't quite matter and wasn't quite energy. The convergence represents a Class 7 existential threat to all sapient life, the computer explained. Estimated time to first contact, originally 847 years. Current estimate, 2.3 years. Dr. Yvonne felt her blood turn to ice. First contact was predicted for when? Initial calculations suggested arrival in approximately 3.2 years from current date. However, recent gravitational anomalies indicate accelerated approach. The convergence has learned to move faster than previously observed. The files showed humanity's desperate preparations, hundreds of years of research into weapons and defenses that sounded like fantasy, reality manipulation devices, quantum combat systems, technologies that worked by changing the basic laws of physics in localized areas. None of it had been ready in time. The human evacuation was not a retreat, the computer stated. It was a strategic redeployment to extragalactic research facilities. Mission objective: develop countermeasures for asymmetric warfare against post-physical entities. Dr. Yvonne understood at last. The humans hadn't left in anger or disgust. They had left to find a way to fight something that couldn't be fought with normal weapons. They had gone to learn how to save a galaxy that didn't want to be saved. The final discovery came in a shielded vault deep inside the station. A single message, recorded by someone the files identified as Admiral Marcus Webb, former head of Human Deep Space Defense. His face appeared on the display. He looked tired, older than his years, but his eyes held determination that burned like stars. "If you're watching this, then the convergence has arrived and we haven't returned yet," he said. "I want you to know that every human who left this galaxy volunteered for a one-way mission. We knew we might not come back. We went anyway." He paused, looking directly at the camera. "We spent 3 centuries trying to protect you. We failed, to make you understand that the universe is not a safe place, that civilization is fragile, that someone has to stand guard while others sleep." Admiral Webb's expression softened. "But we also learned to love you anyway, all of you. Even the ones who hated us. Even the ones who saw us as primitive upstarts. You were worth protecting, even if you didn't want protection." He stood up, moving toward something beyond the camera's view. "We've gone to the place where dead universes drift, where the rules that govern reality can be rewritten. We'll become whatever we need to become to fight this enemy." The Admiral stopped and looked back one more time. The galaxy was worth saving, even if it didn't want to be saved. Remember that. Remember us not as we were, but as we tried to be. The message ended. Dr. Yvonne sat in the silence that followed, tears running down her face. Outside the station, the first convergence ship materialized at the edge of sensor range. It was time to see if the humans had found what they were looking for in the dark between the stars. The first convergence ship appeared without warning at the Andromeda relay station. Lieutenant Kexhai was on routine patrol when his sensors started screaming alerts he had never seen before. The object on his screen didn't look like a ship. It looked like a piece of space itself had gone wrong. Crystalline structures twisted through dimensions that shouldn't exist. The thing was huge, easily the size of a small moon, but it seemed to take up more space than it should. "Control, this is Patrol 7, Kexhai transmitted. "I have an unknown contact at coordinates." His transmission cut off, not because his radio failed, but because there was suddenly no one to transmit to. The relay station was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. Like it had never existed. Where the station had been, space itself was torn. Reality had a hole in it that hurt to look at. And through that hole, more convergence ships were coming. The emergency alert reached Nexus Prime, 8 hours later. Admiral Zextar of the Hegemony War Fleet was in the middle of a routine briefing when his aide rushed in with the report. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Andromeda sector. All of it." Admiral Zextar looked up from his tactical display. "Define lost contact." "Gone, sir. 47 star systems. Just gone. The hyperspace beacons aren't there anymore. Long range, sensors show nothing but empty space." The Admiral felt a chill run through his cybernetic spine. "Show me." The main display showed what had once been a thriving region of space. Trade routes, mining colonies, billions of inhabitants. Now there was only darkness and tears in space-time that made his instruments malfunction just by trying to observe them. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the region. Whatever did this, it's still there, and it's moving toward the core worlds." Admiral Zextar had been a military commander for over 2 centuries. He had fought in 14 wars and survived battles that had destroyed entire fleets. But he had never seen anything like this. "Prepare the Grand Fleet for immediate deployment," he ordered. "All ships, every class, I want everything we have moving toward that sector within 6 hours. His aide looked nervous. "Sir, perhaps we should contact the Council first. Get authorization for... The Council can authorize my funeral if this goes wrong," the Admiral snapped. "Move." 3 days later, the Grand Fleet of the Hegemony encountered its first convergence ship near the Terminus Nebula. Admiral Zextar stood on the bridge of his flagship Domination, watching the enemy through the view screen. The thing was beautiful in a way that made his mind hurt. It moved through space like a living crystal, reality bending around it in waves. "All ships, open fire," he commanded. 2,847 ships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams that could crack planets, missiles that could destroy moons, weapons that had conquered 100 worlds. The beams hit the convergent ship and passed right through it. The missiles exploded harmlessly in empty space. Nothing touched the enemy vessel, then it fired back. The weapon wasn't energy or matter. It was something else entirely. A wave of wrongness that turned the laws of physics against themselves. When it hit the first line of hegemony ships, they didn't explode. They became something else. Admiral Zextar watched in horror as his proud warships twisted into impossible shapes. Their hulls flowed like liquid while their metal became something that existed in too many dimensions at once. The crews inside screamed once, then went silent as they were converted into something that was no longer alive but wasn't quite dead either. "All ships, retreat," he shouted. "Full reverse, get us out of here." But it was too late. The convergence ship had learned from the first attack. Its second weapon passed through their shields as if they weren't there. Ship after ship was transformed into something that hurt to see. Of the entire Grand Fleet, only 12 ships escaped. Admiral Zextar's Domination was one of them, but barely. His ship's hull had been partially converted. Sections of it now existed in 11 dimensions instead of 3. His crew was going insane just from being near the affected areas. The survivors who made it back to Nexus Prime told stories that no one wanted to believe. Weapons that learned to be stronger with each shot fired at them. Hulls that adapted to whatever attacked them. An enemy that didn't just destroy ships but converted them into something alien and wrong. Ambassador Kethra listened to the reports with growing terror. She thought about the human files she had discovered, the warnings, about an enemy that couldn't be fought with conventional weapons. "We need to activate the human defense systems," she told the emergency council session. "Whatever they left behind, we need to use it now." Prime Minister Zarthek slammed his metallic fist on the table. "We tried that months ago. Their systems are locked. We can't access them without human genetic codes." "Then we need to find the humans," Kethra insisted. "They're gone," Zarthek roared. "They left us to face this alone." But they weren't alone. At least not yet. Deep in the abandoned human research facility on Kepler 442b, something was waking up. The monitoring station in the Magellanic Void had detected the convergence arrival and sent out an automated signal. A signal that traveled not through normal space but through the quantum foam that existed between dimensions. The signal reached its destination in a place that couldn't be found on any map. A region of space where failed universes went to die. Where the humans had built their final research stations. Captain Sarah Chen received the signal while standing in a laboratory that existed partially outside normal reality. She wasn't entirely human anymore. None of them were. The work they had been doing changed people in fundamental ways. "They're here," she announced to her team. Around her, beings who had once been human scientists and soldiers turned to listen. They looked like people mostly, but they cast shadows in directions that had no names. They moved through dimensions that didn't exist in normal space. "How long do we have?" asked Dr. Martinez. He had been the fleet's chief physicist before they left. Now he was something that could think in 12 dimensions at once. "The first ship reached galactic space 3 days ago," Sarah replied. "Long-range sensors show 3 more ships emerging from the void. The main force will arrive within a week." They had spent 2 years in this place between realities, learning things that no sapient mind should know, becoming things that no living being should become, all to prepare for this moment. "Are we ready?" someone asked. Sarah couldn't see who. Some of her team existed mainly as probability clouds now. Sarah looked at the weapon they had built. It didn't look like much, just a small device that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. But it was made from the collapsed dreams of dead universes, powered by the screams of entropy itself. "We're as ready as we can be," she said. Remember, we knew this day would come. We knew what we would have to become. Through the laboratory's impossible windows, she could see the galaxy in the distance. Her home. The place they had tried so hard to protect. It looked so small from here. So fragile. They'll never understand what we did, Dr. Martinez said quietly. Even if we save them, they'll never know what we sacrificed. Sarah nodded. That's not why we're doing this. She activated the quantum communicator that connected to every human defense system still hidden throughout the galaxy. For the first time in almost a year, she spoke to the place they used to call home. This is Captain Sarah Chen to all automated defense networks. Authorization code, Omega 77 Alpha. Prepare for emergency activation. The convergence has arrived. Across the galaxy, systems that had been sleeping began to wake up. Weapons that existed in folded space began to charge. Defenses that no one knew existed started coming online. The humans were coming home. But they weren't the same humans who had left. Back on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Kethra felt a chill run through her as every human system suddenly blazed to life at once. The night sky filled with lights that hadn't been there moments before. Whatever the humans had become out there in the dark, they were about to find out if it was enough. The fourth convergence ship materialized above Nexus Prime, just as the morning star was rising. Ambassador Kethra watched from her office window as reality began to break down around the enemy vessel. The ship was different from the others. Larger. More complex. Its crystalline structure pulsed with energies that made space itself ripple like water. Where it passed, the fundamental constants that governed physics began to fluctuate. Gravity flowed in streams instead of fields. Light bent in impossible directions. Time moved in eddies and currents, making some parts of the city age rapidly, while others slowed to a crawl. All defense fleets have been destroyed, reported General Vorthak from the Military Command Center. The convergence ship is not responding to any weapons. It's beginning to convert the outer planet's infrastructure. Kethra could see it happening through her window. The orbital shipyards were transforming into something that existed in too many dimensions at once. Their metal hulls flowed like liquid while taking on properties that violated everything she understood about matter and energy. How long until it reaches the planet's surface? She asked. 6 hours. Maybe less. Throughout the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. The convergence ships moved from system to system, converting everything they touched. Not destroying it, converting it into something else. Something that was still there but no longer belonged to normal reality. The enemy didn't seem interested in conquest or destruction. They were transforming the galaxy into something that could exist in the spaces between universes, making it part of whatever realm they came from. Then, as the fourth ship began its descent toward Nexus Prime's atmosphere, something impossible happened. Reality twisted. Space folded in on itself. And through the tear that opened above the planet, human ships began to emerge. But these weren't the ships that had left 2 years ago. The vessels that came through the dimensional rift barely resembled anything that had ever flown through normal space. Their hulls existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. They moved not by pushing against space, but by convincing the universe that they were already where they wanted to be. Some of the ships looked like they were made of crystallized mathematics. Others appeared to be constructed from frozen time itself. A few seemed to exist as pure concepts given physical form. The lead ship was different from all the others. It looked almost normal until you tried to focus on it. Then your eyes would slide away, unable to process what they were seeing. The ship existed in a state of constant transformation, becoming whatever it needed to be from moment to moment. Ambassador, Kethra's communicator crackled to life. The voice that came through was familiar but changed. "This is Captain Sarah Chen to Nexus Prime Control," the voice said. It still sounded human, but there were harmonics in it that suggested something far more complex. "We're back, Captain Chen," Kethra whispered. "Is it really you?" "Parts of me," Sarah replied. "We went to the edge of everything that exists. We learned to think like the universe thinks. We became what we needed to become to fight this enemy." Through her window, Kethra watched the human fleet take formation around the convergence ship. What happened next defied every law of physics she knew. The humans didn't attack the convergence ship. They did something far more complex. Captain Sarah Chen, now something far beyond what she had once been, reached out with senses that existed in 12 dimensions. She could see the convergence ship's true nature now, a fragment of failed reality, trying to convert this universe into something like its original home. The weapon she deployed wasn't made of matter or energy. It was constructed from pure paradox, a logical impossibility that forced reality to choose between conflicting states of existence. The paradox weapon hit the convergence ship and did something unprecedented. It made the enemy vessel doubt its own existence. For the first time since the invasion began, a convergence ship stopped moving. Its crystalline structure flickered as it tried to process the logical contradiction it had been infected with. Sarah's ship moved closer, deploying weapons that operated by changing the local laws of physics. Where normal space allowed the convergence ship to exist partially outside reality, Sarah's modified physics insisted that everything must follow the same rules. The enemy vessel began to collapse into normal dimensions. Its reality warping abilities failed as the space around it was forcibly restructured to follow consistent physical laws. But the cost was enormous. Every time the humans used their new abilities, they became a little less human. Sarah could feel parts of her consciousness scattering across probability space. Her sense of individual identity was dissolving into something larger and more distributed. Around her, the crew that had once been her friends and colleagues were facing the same transformation. They were winning the battle by becoming something the galaxy would never be able to understand or accept. The fight spread across the entire galaxy. Human ships appeared at every convergence incursion, wielding weapons that shouldn't have been possible. They fought by rewriting the basic rules that governed reality in small localized areas. Against the first convergence ship at Andromeda, Commander Jackson's transformed fleet deployed temporal weapons that attacked the enemy by making its past actions contradict its present state. At the Terminus Nebula, Admiral Webb's ships used quantum weaponry that existed in a state of superposition, simultaneously hitting and missing their targets until the act of observation collapsed the probability wave in their favor. Each victory required the humans to sacrifice more of what they had been. They were saving the galaxy by becoming something beyond its comprehension. The final battle took place in the space between galaxies, where the main convergence force was preparing to emerge. Sarah Chen, now existing more as a distributed intelligence than a single person, led the human fleet into a realm where failed universes drifted like cosmic debris. Here, the convergence showed its true nature. Not ships or beings, but fragments of realities that had collapsed under the weight of their own impossibility. They were trying to find a new universe to inhabit, to transform into something that could sustain their impossible existence. The humans met them with weapons forged from the dreams of dead galaxies. They fought entropy with paradox, battled certainty with calculated impossibility. The war lasted 17 minutes in normal time, but stretched across eons in the twisted space where it was fought. When it ended, the convergence force had been driven back to the void between realities where they belonged, but humanity paid the ultimate price for victory. Sarah Chen tried to return to her physical form one last time. She wanted to say goodbye to the galaxy she had spent her existence protecting, but she discovered she no longer could. Her consciousness was now spread across quantum foam itself. She existed in the spaces between thoughts, in the pause between heartbeats. She had become something that could watch over the galaxy forever, but could never again be part of it. All across the galaxy, the few remaining human defense systems powered down for the last time. In their place, something new appeared. Lights that weren't quite stars. Patterns in space that weren't quite matter. The humans had transcended physical existence entirely. They had become living concepts woven into the fabric of reality itself. Guardian spirits that would watch over galactic civilization from beyond the veil of normal existence. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Kethra stood at her window as the crisis ended. The convergence ship above her planet had dissolved into harmless quantum foam. The reality distortions were fading back to normal. As she watched, words appeared in the air before her, not written in light or projected by technology, but simply there as if the universe itself was speaking. The garden tends itself now. We remain in the spaces between thoughts, in the pause between heartbeats. Remember, kindness is not weakness, and strength shared is strength multiplied. The universe is vast and full of wonders. Try to be worthy of them. Tears ran down Kethra's face as she understood. The humans had kept their promise. They had found a way to fight the impossible enemy, but the cost had been everything that made them human. They had become the galaxy's eternal guardians, watching from a realm beyond physical existence. They would be there when the next crisis came, when some new threat emerged from the dark spaces between stars, when civilization needed protection from things that couldn't be fought with normal means. But they would never again walk among the species they had died to protect. The galaxy learned to govern itself differently after that day. The council chambers were rebuilt with a simple inscription above the great doors. Every choice echoes in eternity. Choose with wisdom. Slavery was abolished throughout known space, not by law or force, but by a simple understanding that somewhere, in the quantum foam of reality itself, the spirits of humanity were watching, and no one wanted to disappoint the guardians who had sacrificed everything for their sake. The galaxy had learned too late what it meant to have true protectors, beings who would give up everything, even their own humanity, to keep others safe. In the empty spaces between the stars, Sarah Chen's consciousness smiled. The garden would tend itself now, and they would be there, invisible and eternal, to help when help was needed. The humans had found their place in the universe at last, not as conquerors or rulers,